Good morning, John.
Hey, Tim.
Morning, Joe.
It was my.
We're not there
I
yet.
hear people, other people.
That's the only one that was there.
Okay.
He always dropped that. If you ever won the lottery, he would go knock on their door.
Oh, good.
That's
It is lovely.
We'll just pick the PDF file. If it's on the screen, it's on the screen. So you're not sharing your screen. Your video is still out there.
Yeah, because your great grandmother didn't know when I was sick.
Oh, don't worry. I didn't know you were here. Sorry. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Apologize for the late start. We have some technical difficulties on our end. This time at 10:11, I'll to call the meeting to order and welcome Tim. Nice to see you. Prior to today's meeting, the board met in closed session to review and discuss matters that in their opinion fell under Section 34 of the Police Services Act and as per the Owen Sound Police Services Bylaw number 2019-01. Moving on to item number 2, approval of the agenda. Can someone make a motion to approve the agenda? Garth, thank you. Seconder? Jill, thank you. All in favor, John? Thank you. Ian, yes. Carrie? Any declaration of conflict of interest arising out of the minutes and matters listed on the agenda? Hearing none. Did we start the recording? Okay. Presentations, deputations, and public question period. There was none presented to us. Confirmation of the minutes of the public session held September 22nd, 2021. Motion for that. Ian, thank you. Seconder? Jill, thank you. John, in favor? Carried. Any business arising out of the public minutes September 22nd, 2021? Hearing none. Moving on to correspondence received. Just a reminder that the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards Labor Conference is coming up November 18th via Zoom. For those who wish to register, please contact Kayla. And I talked about that earlier. Most of the people are going to attend. Ian, did you want to attend that or? It's November 18th. Nope. All right.
That's in the morning.
I think it's in the morning.
I think it is.
9 to 12 or something like that. Also, I sent out in the package today, Crime Stoppers of Grey Bruce Coordinators Report. And it provides some interesting statistics on the number of tips were allocated last year and the total tips year to date. It's interesting that the tips were down approximately 161 less than the same period in 2020. It also talked about the report on fundraising activities, events, and promotions. That was about all I had for recent correspondence. Just under Chairman's report, on September 16th, member Pierce, Chief Ambrose, Inspector Flooney, and myself attended the Crime Stoppers 29th Annual Charity Golf Classic. We didn't win any of the top prizes, but I can say that we all had a good time and the weather was great that day.
Mr. Chairman, the one remarkable thing is in our foursome, there were 3 right-handed players playing left-handed and 1 left-handed player playing right-handed, which reason why we didn't win the.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I'm glad that there was good reason for that. I think it was good for everyone's mental health to get out of the office for a day of relaxation, as it were. Just some information on the tournament. It raised $23,000, and this annual golf tournament dates back to 1993 and has raised in excess of $558,000 support of the Universal Community Program. So it was well attended and was well for really good cause. Moving on to item number 9, reports from Inspector Bishop, and he's going to be Inspector Bishop today.
I'll be Inspector Bishop today. So looking at criminal investigations branch, tragically on September 3rd, the detectives investigated the sudden death of a 9-week-old baby at a residence in the city. And baby boy was found without vital signs when the parents woke up in the morning. The investigation, which is done in conjunction with the Office of the Coroner, revealed no anatomical cause of death, and it's believed to be attributed to sudden death syndrome. sexual exploitation incident. It was historic, involved a person who was a teenager at the time, involved in a sexual relationship with an adult. At the conclusion of the investigation, the offender, a 36-year-old, was arrested and charged with sexual assault and sexual exploitation. He will be appearing in court in November. The detectives working in plainclothes assisted with observing a freedom rally that took place at MPP Walker's office in City Hall. It was a rally focused on what attendees described as resistance to medical tyranny based on vaccination requirements. It was well attended, but no noteworthy incidents occurred. On September 18th, the detectives investigated the sudden death of a 43-year-old homeless man who died in a small encampment on the east side adjacent to the harbor wall. And evidence was discovered at the scene that was indicative of intravenous fentanyl use around the time of the death. And all indications at this point were that it was attributed to a fentanyl overdose. However, we're awaiting toxicology reports. Another drug overdose, September 28th. Detectives investigated the sudden death of a 37-year-old female at a housing complex. Evidence of drug use was found in close proximity to the deceased, and investigation determined that the deceased had been using fentanyl alone just prior to the death. And again, toxicology is pending on that. There was an incident on September 29th of impaired by drug and possession of fentanyl for the purpose of trafficking. 56-year-old man from Kincardine was in charge with impaired driving, vehicle by drug, and possession of fentanyl for the purpose of trafficking as a result of 5 grams of pink fentanyl found on the person of the accused inside the vehicle. Several members of the police service, including some of the members of the criminal investigations branch and our leadership team, attended cultural mindfulness training. It was hosted by the Wet'suwet'en Indigenous Friendship Center. This training was provided by George Cucci. It was excellent training. It was an absolute great day. By all at the training, and there was a lot of information shared and very much enjoyed by all the members.
Good, thanks. I have a comment to that. So that was originally that was proposed as a grant opportunity with Thorn Sound Police Service and Wet'suwet'en. We were unsuccessful for the grant funding. However, we determined we'd move forward with it. Wet'suwet'en hosted the event for the cost. We assisted by providing support for refreshments during the day. It was open to all first responders through Grey and Bruce County. We by far had the most members attend. We were about 12.
Yes.
We had about 12 members attend of the approximately 30 that were there. The city manager was included in there as well, and I think Tim enjoyed himself that day. There's a proposal to bring George Cucci back. I've spent a week training with him back probably 7 or 8, maybe 10 years ago. There's a proposal to bring him back. The other chiefs, the chief from Saugeen Shore, the chief from West Grey, were also in attendance, and so everybody's on the same page about the need for cultural mindfulness, cultural awareness training, and we're going to be bringing him back in 2022. We're just working on some dates and costs, and we'll be working with the city as well. I think there's a need. Tim expressed an interest in extending it to the city staff and city council as well. So it was by far the best day that anybody had experienced. So
Excellent.
it was excellent. George had a 30+ year career with the OPP and spent a number of years doing that for all the OPP members across the province. So he's a wealth of knowledge, and he has instant credibility with any first responders.
And just an update on overdose fatalities. We've now investigated a total of 12 overdoses, deaths in 2021. And just for comparison, there was a total of 4 fatalities in 2019 and 8 in 2020. Wow.
4, 8, 12.
We're not at the end of the year, unfortunately.
No. It's right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject again, I advised the board earlier, I do have to attend a funeral at 11. So if Madam Clerk could note that I'm exiting the meeting at, I guess, 10:20. I thank everyone. I wish everyone a good week.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Can I just ask, is that fairly typical of other services? From going from 4 to 8 now to 12, that's in 3 years?
Everyone is increasing.
That is,
Unfortunately, that is
that's unbelievable.
the path that everybody across the province and country is
I
going
knew
on.
it was increasing, but I had no idea it was, exponentially.
Other than administering Narcan at the scene, if people are using fentanyl alone and they overdose, the death is very, very quick.
I'm just surmising that the fentanyl they're using is not government approved. It may be somehow mixed wrong with carfentanil or some other inappropriate
Well, yeah,
solution. They
even,
don't know what they're taking is what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
not always intentional death, right?
no,
They don't use it for suicide.
No.
So that's scary. So there's some advocates I'm hearing about that are suggesting that government should provide government approved drugs. And that's a whole other subject, but it's
It's a discussion that we've had at the opioid, the drug and alcohol strategy, opioid working group about safe supply.
Yeah.
And certainly controlled consumption sites are another discussion that are ongoing. And larger communities, there may be a need for a controlled consumption site. I haven't seen a demonstrated need here. Obviously, it would get used, but whether or not it's necessary. But the safe supply, given the circumstances and the number of overdoses, is something that I would support moving forward. It also reduces all the petty theft that goes along with supporting a drug habit.
thank you.
So I'll move on to the auxiliary unit. So in September, we're just bringing the auxiliary unit back into the fold again since the COVID restrictions that we've had in place. So we had some of the members participate in a bicycle rodeo for newcomers as part of Newcomers Week Grey Bruce. And bike rodeo taught participants of all ages how to follow the rules of the road and other important safety measures while operating a bicycle. The members attended with our community services officer, Jason Cranny, and other community partners who contributed to the successful event. And this is the first month back for the unit, and so we hosted a barbecue for them. And they also took place in orientation training with CSO Cranny on the new safety village that we have. They'll be used in upcoming events planned for the fall of 2021. Total number of volunteer hours for the month was 67, and we had one auxiliary member submit her resignation to the unit. Very much enjoyed her time with the unit, but due to her schedule, she was unable to continue. So that brings our unit to 17 active members right now.
We're approved for 24 or something,
32.
32. We're waiting. Still a lot bigger than most police services.
Yes, it is very much, and we couldn't do it without them. All of our community events and our community involvement, they're a big part of the service.
I can say often at zone meetings, we're asked about it because it is a model for the, I don't know if people know that, but it is a model here that some of them would have 1 or 2 auxiliary members when we've often had 8 or 9 graduate this year, so it's commendable.
We have a couple of photos there from the bike rodeo with our auxiliary members.
Didn't think you took them that one.
Moving on to the report from the core unit, which is Constable Martin. She's been conducting visits with the businesses downtown. So she completed 6 more visits with the businesses there. And also she's visiting with the businesses around one of our local high schools where we've had, since the start of school, we've had a number of complaints of various issues, loitering in and around businesses, littering, etc. So she's been focusing on that area to try and improve the situation there, working with our community services officer and the staff at the school, educating the students on how they can be better partners in that area. They've been visiting areas around the escarpment, an area known as Narnia, to the students, where students are going off the school property and spending time there, except they're trespassing on some of the neighborhood properties while they're gaining access to the area. So they're trying to keep the students out of there. There's also a presence at the voting stations at the request of Elections Canada on election day. Also around the Julie MacArthur and the Bay Shore, due to minor hockey starting up and increased traffic there, and concerns about the new process, so with the vaccine passports, and also taking part in the positive tickets campaign, identifying youths that are practicing bicycle safety and passing out coupons to them to some of our local restaurants. Foot patrol locations were for focused foot patrol in the River District, Bayshore Park, West DSS, and the 800 block of 10th Street West in response to the business complaints. There was also targeted enforcement at one address in the city that's been identified as a hotspot, and around one of the local high schools. And the Corps officer also took place in some training, the cultural mindfulness training that we did with George Cucci, and also some training on human trafficking. There's no questions. I'll move on to my reports. Collision statistics for the month of September, 30 collisions, and that was similar to last month and the same time last year. 12 on the east side, 6 on the west side, 12 in parking lots, and half were investigated by our collision reporting center and half by our officers. And to the community services office, had a very, very busy month with the start of school, with traffic and parking safety, as well as bus safety, doing some education there, and also presence at the schools. Generally in that first month, we experienced a lot of issues in and around the schools with parents getting used to the rules, and also the movement of buses through there. So he had a presence at several of the schools, as well as our traffic officers and our patrol officers. We conducted a traffic enforcement program that focused on parking issues and moving violations in and around the schools. We have 2 co-op students that have just started with us from OSDSS, and they're working with our CSO and also helping out the staff down in our records department. He also continued with the positive ticket program, working with our Corps officer and identifying youth that are committed to positive and safe actions for themselves and others with bicycle safety. Partnered with Mwikwadong for the cultural training. Continued partnership with the Newcomer Family Program and assisted with Newcomer Week in Great Bruce on September 13th. He was also asked by the Mwikwadong staff to sit in and assist with the local youth group when he can, to provide educations on relating to youth and safety. There was a curriculum developed in regards to human trafficking in French for the French-speaking classes at St. Dominique, and also That was a partnership with the OPP, Victim Services, and Women's House of Grey Bruce. And he was also part of the Truth and Reconciliation Sacred Fire event that was held. Among other things, several lockdown drills. Moving on to lost hours in training, we had 7 members report sick during the month of September for a total of 196 hours. That's down significantly over the same time last year. We have 1 member that remains on WSIB and 3 members that are on LTD. Additional training, and we had our recruit at OBC. They continue their training there. We had somebody train in the criminal investigations course. We have 1 member that's working on the IACP leadership course. That's quite an involved course that spans over approximately 3 months for intermittently through that time. We had a member on the search warrant course and the radar instructor course at the police college. And to frontline patrol, between all of the officers, we had 150 HDA tickets issued, 47 cautions, 7 Liquor License Act charges, 61 criminal code charges, and 126 hours of foot patrol. We had 13 on-duty ride checks for the month, and during the month, we had 5 impaired driving charges laid. That concludes my reports. If you wish, I can move on to speaking about our snow removal.
Yes, please.
So the contract for snow removal for the police service was put out for tender in September by the city on behalf of the board. Davidson Construction was a successful contractor who has a good reputation. In previous contracts, the cost of the work from Davidson is $145 for each snow plowing event, $95 for sanding and salting, and $190 per hour for snow hauling. This is up over the previous company that we had, and the numbers are listed there. And I'm looking for a request from the board to approve this new contract, which will be for 1-year term.
The motion for Inspector Flunn's recommendation.
So how did they narrow down to this?
They were the lowest bidder that came in, so. Yeah.
I think that's a process done by the city as well.
Yes.
To get involved.
Yeah, the city does that for us.
Could we have a motion in for Inspector Flunn's recommendation? Jill, thank you. Seconder? Garth, thank you. Ian, in favor? Okay. Carrie? Okay. Thanks, Inspector. Appreciate that. Moving on to reports from Director for Civilian Services. Okay, Flunny and
I'll take
okay.
You can't speak for Director Flynn.
Yeah.
So in September for warrant bylaw related to taxis, there were 3 licenses for 6 the previous year, and adult entertainers were 3 and 2 in 2020. And the courts. Custody transported this month for a total of 5. Is up somewhat as courts reopen. Video appearances 64 people in custody. Meals 8, special constable total hours 926.75 compared to 799 last October when things were really shut down. The courts, you'll see these numbers start to increase slightly now as the courts open up a little bit more and they're dealing with some of the backlog and they're holding trials and things. Superior Court, Family Court remain the only, and criminal court, courtrooms and that are hearing matters in person. Prisoners still aren't being transported at this time. Still being dealt with here. There is nothing to report from the front entrance. For records, Local criminal records checks. They're being completed within 1 to 2 weeks of people submitting their applications. And a total of 7,807 bulk searches were completed in September 2021. And you can see that that's almost double from 3,300 the previous year. So our third-party records checks has gone up considerably. We look at Director Matheson's reports. Calls for service. See, they've leveled off. They've actually increased somewhat from September 2020 to September 2021, down slightly. The priorities still remain fairly consistent. September 2021, there's an increase in priority. There's a slight increase in priority 2, and a slight decrease in priority 1, but overall they're pretty much the same. Year-to-date comparisons, you'll see that 2020 we're just slightly below 300 calls below, 331 calls below last year, so we're at a decrease of 2.5% calls for services. We'll be doing some analysis to try and figure out what exactly that is attributed to, whether we can attribute it back to something. But it's nice to see that the numbers are leveling off or going down slightly.
But officers are still working on calls building up in the screen. It's not like they're clear the screen.
Yeah, no, those 300 calls over the years. You know, if it gets to 360 by the end of the year, it's 1 call a day. It's really not a huge decrease, but it's also nicer that it's not going up.
Yeah.
So no questions about Director Belknap's reports. We're still having some trouble with the online version that we're trying to get to that we used to get. Director Hill for Information Technology. He was working on the First County Radio Tower MOUs as well, and then setting up the radio system there. The alternate dispatch site work, we should be able to go live in November. The backup generator is just waiting for inspection from the electrical people, and then once it's live, then we can move some of the last items over there. He was doing a audit for Saugeen Shores IT security, and as well for West Gray, and that's all on a cost recovery. We worked on the Hanover mobile dispatch solution. That's going to relieve some of the work for our dispatchers, as they'll have a computer system live in their car. They'll be able to do some of their own work instead of asking dispatch to do that for them. Gray County agreement for radio system and dispatch equipment procurement. So the Gray County regional countywide fire system, radio system. We've been working on that. We're also starting to migrate to a new phone system that we in the project that we started. That'll be moving forward before the end of the year, starting before the end of the year. And Chris did an awful lot of help onboarding our new financial coordinator, executive assistant, not just setting up all their accounts, but assisting with this with budgeting and all of those things. My activities, just to highlight some of the things the day with Moequidong. That was a really positive day for everybody. And I attended the OACP conference. Oh, sorry, that's in October. It's not on there yet. So, but I had attended the OACP conference in the early part of the month. That'll be next month. That's it for that. Moving forward to the financials. Unfortunately, I don't have a package for you today. Emily is getting up to speed. We have gotten the numbers and we've pulled them, but because of the fact that we weren't invoicing through the city-driven work tech program, all the invoicing is done manually, and it only comes in when it gets received. So the numbers still aren't reflective of that because we were behind in invoicing, but that was the one thing that got dropped off. So we've sent out significant amount of invoices, and they're starting to trickle in, but we should be fine moving forward. Speaking to Kate, the last time she gave me a number that we needed to invoice for, and we were well ahead of that number in order to maintain our financial stability for this year. We should be in a good position moving forward. We'll get that moving. One of the draws on Emily as well and myself was creating a budget for 2022 so that we'd be in line with the city timelines. And we're moving forward with that. We've created our first draft of that. So we'll be able to meet those timelines and meet the demands. So my apologies if you don't have that done.
Well, that's good.
And then review of the operational plan, budget took priority there as well. And I just left it on the agenda so that we have it here. So we move it to the next one. Emily was inundated with new information between taking over for payroll and taking over for accounts receivable and accounts payable. And, so for the budgeting purposes, I learned Excel and I managed to create a budget for all the officers' wages and civilian wages and things. So thank goodness we had a good starting point from our previous financial coordinator that I could plug the numbers in and made sense. So that's the end of my updates.
Thank you, Chief. Moving on to other items in new business, and we will just handle it now. On the agenda that we talked about the on-site service board meeting dates. Pass this down. We got on the agenda. I didn't get the list to Caitlin time, so that's my fault. And these are just for review. We'll take a look at them next meeting, just so you take a look at your schedules for 2022 and see if there's any conflicts and whether we have to make any changes or not. So just an FYI, but we'll confirm them because they really should be posted on the Own Something Services website for the public to know what times they are. And also these will be the same time, starting at 9 o'clock with the close and going to 10 o'clock at the open side of it. Moving on to item B, I talked about the enhancement grant application.
And so there was an opportunity that became available to us through the Ministry of the Solicitor General for a new mobile crisis response team enhancement grant. So we have mobile mental health victims response team that we already partner with the CMHA, and so this was an opportunity to expand that. As we've discussed, it flows through the police, and at the last meeting we discussed it. The intention of the grant was to fund and expand enhancement to our existing teams. We submitted a grant application on behalf of the Hanover, Southern Shores, West Grey, ourselves, and the South Bruce and Bruce County Grey OPP detachments. And it worked with our community partners at CMHA, and we would be a flow through agency to them. And with the assistance of Grey Bruce Health Services, the Grey County EMS and Public Health, the Rapid Access Addiction Medicine Clinic, and the United Way in Grey Bruce and Bruce County. And the grant application proposes to fund 2 addictions outreach workers who would be employed by CMHA and funded through a flow through our service. And the grant opportunity, the request was for $208,000 in year 1 and $196,000 in year 2. So we'll be waiting. Could be several months to determine whether or not we're successful in that award, but it certainly falls in line with attempting to take police out of the equation and move forward and have the proper people move forward with that.
To you, John, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would they fund it through? Why would this be a flow through agency as opposed to funding directly to mental health, where they could control the CMHA or the people that are responding to those issues? I know there's good close partnership, but it's like,
So
I don't understand why it would come through that to police.
I think it has to do with what ministry it was run through. The Ministry of the Solicitor General works with policing as opposed to the other agencies. And some services have chosen to expand and hire people and bring them on as employees. My personal opinion on that was that the police are already doing what we probably shouldn't be doing. Yeah. So it made more sense to partner with another agency and not necessarily, make them employees of police service, but the funding is there, funding's available, and the best opportunity was to move forward in this fashion. So that's how we move forward.
It might give us an opportunity to provide some direction from you on what's going on in the street, et cetera.
Sure.
A little more influence, perhaps.
Yeah.
So hopefully we're successful with that and expands the outreach in the community. Certainly addictions outreach workers will help. You know, they're along the same lines of the social navigators that I've spoken about other times in meetings that you know, take away from the police response and move to another more community focused response. So we'll wait and we'll keep you posted on whether or not we're successful in this option.
Could there be also implications with collective bargaining agreement, hiring these mental health workers that would fall under that?
No, just because it's a flow through, we're not actually hiring.
No, I know, but if
Oh,
we
if
hire
we-
them,
If we did, they'd be contractors, much like the human trafficking grant that we applied for. They'd be, you know, they'd be contractors to the service, and they'd have to support, they'd have to look after themselves. There's a whole lot more to that, so that they are employees of the service.
Good. Having completed all the items that were on the agenda, I'm going to terminate the meeting at 10:45. Thank you, everyone. The next meeting is November 24th.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.